Hello, friends, and welcome to Talking with Famous People. I'm your host Eric, and as you can see, I've got my head on a pedestal. This video is called Action and Deliberation and Knowledge. And I say various functions, may not be called that, but it's about that. It may be called Why There Will Always Be a Problem with ESFPs and Typology. So I want to begin with a few quotes here to show how there are a couple of different frames of reference that compete with each other often enough in life. He who hesitates is lost, but look before you leap. Don't be swayed by the mob, but read the room. Strategy wins wars, tactics wins battles, and winning a war requires winning battles. So, you see, these kind of aphorisms and approaches towards life represent two basic ways that people deal with, I guess, a basic strategy or configural approach towards life itself. And one of them might be called an action deliberation approach. The other is called the knowledge interface approach. If you look here, the goal of a deliberation function, or a deliberative attentional manner, is to be sure. So work through all the specifics of it to make sure you know correct. You know, just going with your instincts, you really know. You're sure. It's paired with action because an action function requires you to make the right play for this situation. And so you need to be sure you're making the right play before you make it. A knowledge approach is one that says, be sure enough. And it is because you know that your job is to play the situation in the right way. The situation is fluid and evolving. You can only be so sure going into it. You're going to have to read the room, quote unquote, or read the non-room dynamic system. So, whether or not you believe in cognitive functions, typology, personality type, anything like that, it is pretty impossible to deny that these two basic approaches to the world exist. You might deny that they are exclusive in one person, for example. Sure, that's fine. But that they do exist and that they sometimes go into conflict with each other. So, for example, there's no disputing that there's a difference between a turn-based game and a real-time shooter. The turn-based game gives you an opportunity to decide what you're going to do, make your play, and then it's the other guy's turn, right? Versus a real-time shooter, well, you got to act on the fly. So, here's the thing. TI is a way of being sure logically. And when paired with extroverted intuition, it's trying to make the right play for the situation with logic and words. If TI is paired with SE, it's trying to make the right play for the situation with logic, but it's caring about impacting rather than word creativity. So let's look down here at these. Well, let's look at the knowledge interface first. Let's say I've got NIFE. I need to know well enough, be sure well enough how the world works in general to play the situation right on an FE ground. If I'm using SI as a knowledge function, I need to know from past experience enough what meow represents to play the situation correctly on an FE ground or play the situation correctly on a TE ground, depending on what you're paired with, right? So SIFE is like, I'm going to keep a repertoire of things I know about you to make sure that I'm managing your emotions well enough. I'm not going to forget your birthday. I'm not going to yada, yada, yada. NIFE is much more about engaging with the person, I guess, both without that SI keeping track of, but with a overarching keeping track of how your intuitive understanding of the other person is likely to be or something. TE plays out the same way but for dynamics of physical systems. So instead of being socially successful, you are engaging with systems that you have to play around with to figure out what's wrong with it. You can't deductively conclude exactly what you're going to do before you go to get to the job site, right? All right, so let's look down here at this deliberation action pairs. So to sum this up kind of on this chart here, we've got SETI, ESTP, the frame is impact, the tool is word legitimacy, and the explanation is basically, as they impact the world, they parse justifications, others and their own. NETI, ENTP, the frame is creativity, the tool is word legitimacy, as they create, they parse justifications, themselves and others. Note, is it possible for ENTP to create things that aren't judged by word legitimacy or executed by a word legitimacy? Of course, because the tool function is not automatically paired with the action function. I can be creative without being logical. I can be creative just by singing random syllables over guitar chords. That's not having anything to do with word legitimacy. And SE Dom or SE user anybody can pay attention via extroverted sensing. They can dig a hole in the ground that creates an impact that's not justified or understood or explained or realized by words, right? If you fall in the hole, you fall in the hole. Words don't matter. So in that case, what we're showing is that just because something is a tool function or a frame of reference doesn't mean that it's always in play. The frame of reference is always in play, but the tool function is not. So, I misspoke there when I said the other thing. So, okay. Now let's look at the ISTP. Word legitimacy is their frame of reference. Impact is their tool. After parsing justifications, then they impact the world. INTPs, frame of reference, word legitimacy, tool, creativity. They parse justifications creatively. So you'll notice how far from actual action the INTP is because their form of being is to parse justifications creatively. Whereas an ENTP is to create while parsing justifications. Big difference, right? SEFI, ESFP, impact is their frame of reference, but their tool is not word legitimacy. It's personal significance. So as they impact the world, they check for consistency with what they want. This is the important and key point of this whole video. Whether or not that's a good idea depends entirely on where you are and what you're doing. And when we're talking about typology, what we need is a strong focus on word legitimacy. So it's going to be either in the frame or the tool or both. You know, I mean, not both, but, you know, it's like INTP, ENTP, the creativity is another word function. So it's doubled down with those two. They're going to be the most likely to be correct about typology. They could be wrong about it, but even when they're wrong, they tend to get wrong by being overly complicated, like INTPs basically have done a lot of TI work on socionics without doing a lot of framework that they need to do. So, or NTPs in general, not just INTPs. But, so as a consequence, socionics has fallen victim to what you might call TI diminishing returns. Now, returning to the subject at hand, of course, you'll find no diminishment in me from said bar because it's an important part of a balanced breakfast. Now let's look at ENFP. Their frame is creativity. Their tool is personal significance. They create by expressing their authentic feelings. ISFP. Personal significance is their frame. Tool is impact. They act in accordance with what's important to them. INFPs, personal significance, tool, creativity. They create by expressing their authentic feelings. So, why do I have problems all the time with ESFPs and ENFPs? Well, because when ENFPs are talking about typology, what are they doing? they're creating based on what's important to them. Unfortunately, this isn't the sort of thing that allows you to do that. Typology isn't a painting. We can't all just make up our own systems and go, they're all beautiful and all equally good. Because it's an actual explanation for something. In other words, it is more correct to put whales with mammals than it is to put them with reptiles, even though whales swim in the water and aren't fish. Because typology is like trying to figure out what kind of tree something is. Pictures of trees. So, what a lot of people do, but most of all who does this are ESFPs. They want typology to be like this. I'm trying to figure out what my picture of myself, which tree it looks like. Okay? I want to figure out which one it is. Oh, I'm like this one. I'm very red. I'm very beautiful. I stand out. I'm well placed on the yard. That must be me. That's typing yourself by comparing against a type description. How do you actually figure out what kind of tree something is? Okay, so how do you actually figure out what kind of tree it is? A bunch of stuff like this. Well, does it have this? Or does it have this? Or does it have this? Oh, it's one of these? Okay, cool. Are they simple like this? Or are they more like this one? We've got a bunch of shit attached to one branch. Oh, it's like this. They're alternate. I think it's like this kind. And I was trying to figure this out earlier, but I got it wrong. Honey locust. Oh, that's the honey locust tree? Okay, well, I wasn't actually trying to figure that out. But anyway, the point is this. I'm trying to figure out this tree in my front yard, and I'm not quite getting it. Is there a problem with the fact that it is some kind of tree? No, it is a specific kind of tree. It's not, but it's this kind of tree. Or, it's this kind of tree. Over here. I'm one of these kind of trees. Well, what kind of tree is that? Oh, it's a sycamore tree. Oh, well, I must be a sycamore tree then. I look like that tree. Whether or not you have a mirror that accurately tells you what kind of tree you look like depends on whether or not you do this, parse justifications for word legitimacy, or whether you do this. Can't check consistency with what you want in terms of personal significance. So, if in fact we're talking about a lot of things in life, then this is the vastly more important one to use. More important, a better one to use, the more correct one to use, the preferable one to use. If I come into your relationship and start telling you TI reasons why I think your relationship should fail and you're happy, but logically it really shouldn't work because of meh, you'll call bullshit, because I'm trying to impose a universal frame of word legitimacy on things that are matters of your personal significance. So this frame of reference is appropriate for those kinds of questions. The problem, of course, to repeat, is that they bring this tool function into play when trying to determine what type they are. So they refuse to answer these questions that let me tell them they're a honey locust. Often. Why is this especially true of ESFPs? They don't want to answer these questions that tell them they're a honey locust. Why? Because they've already decided they're a beautiful tree that looks like this. And they're not sure what kind it is. I tell you, okay, well, you do kind of look like that, but that's not a sycamore tree, that's a maple tree. Well, how do you know? Well, because of all this shit. Because I checked which kind of leaf you have, whether it's meow, whether it's meow, whether it's meow, right? You can't do it your way. It doesn't work. Because why? Most of all, one important thing. People, unlike trees, lie to themselves. They lie to themselves for a variety of reasons. TI users, especially TI tool users, like especially me, ENTP types, are going to lie to themselves about their relationships all the time. Every time I got into a relationship prior to this one, I said the same words I do in this one. This is great. This is going to be a perfect relationship. In every previous relationship, reality kept fighting back against me. Why? Because my word legitimacy doesn't mean shit. My word creativity doesn't mean shit when it comes to the actual experience of two people actually being compatible or actually not, and enjoying each other's company or not. These kind of simple matters of personal significance are important, and matters that I will get wrong usually. I happen to have gotten it right this time. Last time, I'm not going to have to worry about it again. Rachel and I get along like two fingers that are crossed like this, crossed with two other fingers that are crossed like this. Pyow! But it doesn't change the fact that when I bring my wrong tool function into the wrong frame of reference, I am going to be like as I have been in every relationship prior to this one, really. Note, the equivalent is ESFPs and ENFPs bringing their personal significance tool function into typology. This is a real way of parsing and analyzing, treating as an object of analysis, the human being as it configures. There are genuinely 16 configurations. These 16 configurations exist definitionally, necessarily, observationally, axiomatically, and in a lot of other ways. They express across various vectors, so it's difficult to precisely limit them to meow and not meow. But when you define them relationally to what they exclude, when I'm attending like this, I'm not attending like this, definitionally, then it becomes a pretty obvious a taxonomy as, say, birds and fish and mammals. Just, it's obvious for people who have a native capacity to see and experience the empirics of mapping stuff. That's to say, logical arguments, argumentation, claims, justifications, etc. If you're not capable of doing that because that's not in your ego thing, and it's in fact it's polar, if word legitimacy is polar, then you're going to instead be looking at what you want to be true when we're talking about things that actually we need to check see if they really are true. Just as when I try to do that with my personal feelings and my personal relationship, I'll just assume I can make it up because it's just subjective and arbitrary anyway, when really there is an authentic personal feeling there that needs to be accounted for. So there's no reason for us to fight. There is good reason for both parties, ESFPs and ENTPs, for example, to acknowledge and recognize the limits of their own frame of reference and tool function, and the way in which those limits mean they're only meaningfully applying their attention in certain forums, situations, kind of circumstances. And that's this video on the action deliberator types. Thanks for watching.